Do you find that you are constantly yo-yo dieting? Maybe you have a negative body image, or maybe you're constantly striving for an ideal that you're never satisfied with. If any of those things apply to you, then intuitive eating might be the solution. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Kayla and I release new videos every Monday about all things BPD. So if that sounds good to you, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below as well as the bell notification up top. Today I am doing something a bit different, which is talking about intuitive eating. I know that this is kind of not related to BPD, but it actually is, for the reason that borderline personality disorder also has a high comorbid rate with eating disorders. Personally speaking, I know that body image issues is something that I have struggled for my entire life, especially as a woman and especially as a woman who has BPD. And so I figured that I would share my wealth of knowledge with the rest of you. The term intuitive eating was coined in 1995 when there was a book released about this topic called Intuitive Eating, which I will put a link in the show notes down below. But essentially, intuitive eating, what it is, it's a philosophy that makes you the expert of your own body, of your own hunger cues, and it's an anti-diet approach to being healthy, meaning that you are the only person that is the expert of your own body, that knows when you're hungry. This approach is really radically different from the typical diets and health promoting things that we see in our society today, because it's actually all about eating what you want. It's not about cutting out things or restricting yourself. It's about making you the expert of your internal world. Intuitive eating has 10 key principles. And the first one is to reject diet mentality. Diet mentality is all about promoting this idea that there's an ideal diet out there that will work for you. Intuitive eating is the opposite. It's an anti-diet approach. Diets, we know that they have a 98% failure rate, meaning that after 5 years, people who do diets will regain all of their weight and usually more. But for some reason, we beat ourselves up thinking that we're the ones who don't have the willingness, that we're lazy, that we're not motivated, that we lack self-control. But no, it's actually the diets themselves that are broken. If, for example, you have asthma, and I told you, here's an asthma pump that will completely eradicate your asthma for the next 2 weeks, but after that, we'll amplify it and make it 5 to 10 times worse than it was before. Would you take that medication? The answer is no. And this is what diets are doing, right? So when we're doing the diets, it's not us that's broken, it's the prescription itself that's broken. And so intuitive eating helps us to work through this idea that's so highly valued and promoted in society so that we can drop those ideals and refocus on making ourselves the expert of our own bodies, of our own hunger signals, and not to rely on everything else that everyone is promoting. The second principle of intuitive eating is to honor your hunger. Hunger is not your enemy. And intuitive eating actually teaches you to respond to hunger cues when you feel them, because typically what happens is when we ignore them, we end up overeating. And I know that this is not what you're trying to do, quite the opposite. Most people who are dieting, they actually want to stop overeating, but by ignoring hunger cues, by starving ourselves, our body ramps up those hormones that cause us to be hungry. And so when we start to honor our hunger, when we start to eat when we're actually hungry, things kind of settle down. One of the things I learned through intuitive eating, specifically to honoring your hunger, is that you don't need to wait for 12 o'clock to eat lunch. If I'm hungry at 11:23, that's fine. If I'm hungry for dinner at 4:18 p.m., that's okay too. So it's about learning to break these ideas that we have in our mind as to when is an appropriate time to eat and how much you should be eating, and et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And going back to just honing in on our body. So tuning in for things like a rumbling stomach, being irritable, having a headache, low energy, low concentration, obsessively thinking about food, those are all cues that are trying to tell you, go eat. The third principle is to make peace with food. So this is calling a truce with food. This is about stopping this should and shouldn't eat these things. This is about giving yourself permission to keep junk, or as I call them, pleasure foods in your household, because when you don't let yourself keep ice cream or candy or chips in the house, you're actually reinforcing these beliefs that you have no self-control, and that if you let yourself have those things in your household, then you would just be out of control. You would eat all of them. And it makes them that much more tempting because they become this forbidden, impossible food. And we know Adam and Eve, for example, with the apple tree, it was forbidden. And when things are forbidden, we have more likelihood to be drawn towards them. This is the same thing that you're doing with food. And so by making peace with food, you can actually teach yourself that no, you're actually able to have things around you and not eat all of it, not eat the whole tub of ice cream or the whole chips, because when you start honoring your hunger and listening to what your body really needs, those things don't become as problematic. The point of this principle is to make it so that eating raspberries and eating chips has the same emotional effect on you, which is neutral, right? It's just a food that's trying to fuel you. Relating to this would be the fourth one, which is the challenge the food police. Okay, so this is all about challenging that there's no food that is inherently good or bad, that you are not bad or you shouldn't feel guilty for eating specific things. Food is fuel. And food has different purposes, whether that's to give us nutrients or to help us connect with people or give us simple pleasure. When you're traveling and you want to be part of the culture and connect to the roots and the history, and that's done through food, that's okay. And that you're not a bad person for indulging or having preferences that maybe other people deem as unhealthy or bad. The next principle is all about respecting your fullness. Just like your body sends you cues to tell you that it's hungry, so respecting your hunger, you also need to respect your fullness, because your body will let you know when it's comfortably full. Oftentimes we ignore this because we're eating mindlessly, we're eating quickly, we're not paying attention to the textures, the feel of it. When we're eating food, when you're really craving chocolate, for example, we get desensitized to the taste and the excitement of chocolate after the first few bites. And after that, you're just eating mindlessly, right? And it's not to say that you can't eat a whole chocolate bar or a whole piece of cake. That's absolutely not what it means. It just means to tune in to your body. Take breaks while you're eating. Check in with yourself. Is this still satisfying me? Is this still tasting as good as what I was hoping for? How am I feeling from a 1 to 10? So putting down your fork, taking breaks, drinking water, to really immerse yourself in the experience of eating. If possible, to eat without distractions. I know that when I'm watching movies and I'm distracted, I'm extra snacky because it's just a habit, right? I want snacks to eat, and that's completely okay. And a good way to tell if you're just bored or you're hungry is to make yourself a plate of food, sit down with no distractions, so no phone, no nothing, and start eating. And if you're annoyed with the fact that you need to be sitting to eat, you're probably just bored, right? Because when you're really hungry, I'm fine to sit and do nothing because I'm starving and I need to eat. So we want to respect our hunger, and we also want to respect our fullness. The next thing is all about discovering the satisfaction factor. So this is about making our food appealing, right? Making it look and taste and smell as possibly good as you could. When you have a nice plate with different colors and textures, and maybe some things are cold and hot, it makes the experience of eating that much more enjoyable. And we want to enhance our experience. We want the process of we're cooking this meal that smells good, and we're immersed in the experience of the satisfaction of cooking, of immersing ourselves in food. Because eating is a need that we have to stay alive, and it's such a big part of our lives. Of course, it's important to make it as satisfying, as exciting as possible. This next principle is all about honoring feelings without using food. So like I was saying, for this boredom, oftentimes we eat to fill space. We eat because we're bored, we eat because we're sad, because we're anxious, because we're angry, and we're allowed to do this. By the way, intuitive eating does not say this is fundamentally bad. It just states that if this is the norm of what you're doing constantly, then you're not taking the time to really address your feelings. So substituting food for things like meditation, journaling, therapy, going for walks, discussing feelings with others can help you process whatever you have pent up and to leave food for just being food. And sometimes it's okay. It's okay to use food for emotional purposes once in a while, as long as you're being intentional and you're self-aware that this is what you're doing and you're choosing to do that, that's fine. When this becomes a standard and it's becoming this automatic thing that you're not even conscious that you're doing, this is when it's problematic. So we want to really deal with our feelings without food. And relating to this next thing is honoring our body. Our body does so many wonderful things and we constantly criticize it. So it's moving away from this very external and objectifying perspective of thinking that we're nothing more than a body, that we're not good enough. And going back to these internal feelings of recognizing the wonder and the beauty it is that we have a body that allows us to move and to play and to see and to love and to be cared for, to travel, to experience music and laughter, right? So turning this experience and really feeling the powerfulness and the gratefulness that we should hold for our bodies about all the wonderful things that it allows us to do as women, for example, bearing children. That is a wonderful, and it's almost a miracle to see that our body allows us to grow a human being within it. And we oftentimes overlook these things. So spending more time focusing on body gratitude, so being thankful for all the things it allows us to do, rather than objectifying ourselves, is part of this intuitive eating philosophy. The next principle is about exercising, or as they call it in the book, movement. So it's about shifting from this perspective of needing to exercise to shape our bodies to look a certain way, to moving our bodies so that we feel more energized, so that we feel connected to ourselves and to others. I used to think as walking as something that was not good enough. So even though I had walked for an hour that day, I came home after and thought to myself, wow, I did nothing today. Realistically though, I moved my body for an hour. I connected and I took care of myself, but because walking wasn't shaping my body, wasn't allowing me to shed pounds and have a huge ass like I would see on Instagram, I was like, okay, well, this is useless. And so I would reduce my walking, and I wasn't walking as much as I like. And I actually love walking. I love biking. I love playing sports. I love doing physical things that allows me to connect to others and myself and nature. And when the focus is not on shaping your body, it becomes so much easier to do this. This is often why we see people who will have New Year's resolutions to work out and change their bodies and lose a bunch of weight, and they stick to it for 2 to 3 weeks to a month, and then they give up because it's focused on this external goal. Whereas when we shift this to an internal process of moving our bodies to feel energized, to improve our mental health, it becomes easier to do because it's not focused on external things. It's focused on, am I waking up and feeling energized? Am I waking up and feeling connected? Am I waking up and feeling motivated? If all of those things are pointed to that, then yes, you're going to keep moving your body. And the last principle is all about gentle nutrition, okay, what they call it. It's about eating things that taste good, that make you feel good. You will see that through the process of intuitive eating, at the beginning, you're probably going to be eating a lot more pleasure foods than you're used to because you're compensating for all of these things that were forbidden for so long. And it's almost like reteaching yourself what you actually like. This gentle nutrition piece, because of course intuitive eating, we still want to focus on health, right? What makes us feel the best, what makes us feel energized. Sometimes that's a big plate of pasta. Sometimes that's a salad, sometimes that's chocolate, sometimes that's ice cream, sometimes that's fruit. So it's really about getting really in touch with your body, how you feel as you're eating the food, how you feel afterwards, measuring things like energy levels, your mood, rather than your physical appearance, will help you stick with this gentle nutrition. Now, obviously this video does not do full justice to the range of what intuitive eating actually is and all the benefits that it brings about. So I would really encourage you to read the book for yourself. As you're reading or learning about it, you might feel uncomfortable. I know that I did at first because this goes against everything that you were probably taught your entire life. It goes against everything that society preaches. And it's difficult to be the odd one out. It's difficult to walk the unconventional path, but I can really tell you that it's worth it. On the other side, There's so much potential for growth, for an improved mental wellness, and just a betterness of yourself. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and to learn about this eating philosophy. I know that it has had great benefits in my own life, and I really hope that it can do the same for yours. On that note, have an amazing week, and I will see you next Monday for another episode of On the Line.